Welcome to Leadership Matters with Dr. Sheryl White, Dr. Undraye Howard, and Dr. Loretta Howard. This is your forum for exploring and discussing challenges that are faced by public and nonprofit leaders. And now, Leadership Matters.
Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors, informing leaders and inspiring solutions. I'm Dr. Loretta Howard, the lead co-host for today, and I am delighted to have with me Dr. Undraye Howard, as always. Hello, Dr. Dre.
Hello.
Dr. Sheryl White is traveling today, so she won't be with us, but we'll continue on. We are actually continuing the discussion on the anatomy of a conflict, or the anatomy of conflict. Joining us today is Mr. Joseph Alonzo, and Mr. Alonzo has served as the CEO of Cocoon House since 2017. He brings more than 20 years of experience in developing effective services for youth, as well as a wealth of hands-on knowledge and interdisciplinary skills. He has a passion and commitment to ensuring the success of all young people through the agency's groundbreaking work with homelessness and at-risk youth, innovating programs of prevention, housing, and outreach, education, and employment, to which you are definitely going to hear more about that. So thank you for joining us, Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Loretta. Thank you, Dr. Dre. It's an honor to be here today.
Yeah, excellent.
Great. We usually start each show with questions from our audience, and we love having these questions from our audience. So you'll also have an opportunity to answer it as well. So since this month we've been focusing on conflict, our first audience question is, how do you handle conflict when it involves donors or board members and not just staff? Ooh.
Wow.
Dr. Undraye, did you go first?
That's a tough one, but a good question. I love our audience questions. They challenge us each and every week. I think, the right answer probably is carefully, but without compromise, right? So I kind of put that piece in there too as well. So, conflict certainly involving donors and board members, carries a certain kind of weight, a different kind of weight. There's relational capital, there's fiscal stakes as part of that process, org power, all in the same room. And so, I kind of name the tension, I think. I'm always a big believer in just naming the tension without inflaming it or over exaggerating it. I certainly think about my team. I am first and foremost going to protect my team, obviously, when it comes to this dynamic, and I document when necessary. And again, for me, the deeper truth is, some of the most important moments, particularly of my leadership, have come when I've had to hold the boundary with someone the organization couldn't afford to lose, and did it anyway. Usually, the relationship survived. So I think just being honest, carefully, being meticulous, being thoughtful and mature about how I manage that process is important. So that's how I would answer that for that particular audience member.
All right, thank you. And Joseph, how would you answer that?
Well, it's funny. I had the exact same word come to mind, was carefully. I've been in these situations before, and there's high stakes, as you said. You don't want to burn a bridge with a donor or board member, but there's agency values that need to come into play. Your mission, depending on what the nature of the conflict is, you have to stay true to the service to the organization. You'll probably hear me talk a little bit more about that, but I use that kind of as my guiding light of what serves the young people and the organization, even if it's in conflict with one of our key supporters. So we have to be able to lean into those discussions carefully and thoughtfully, but they do come up. It's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I agree with both of you. I really don't have anything to add. You do have to be careful. You also need to keep your mission in mind. The one thing I will say is I like to listen to all parties to try to see what exactly is the core that's going on. So be that listening person to really try to evaluate what's going on and not jump to conclusions right away. So thank you so much. Okay, audience, we want you to keep sending in those wonderful questions,
Yes.
and we'll have a second question a little bit later on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joseph, to tell us a little bit about your leadership journey.
Well, it's interesting. I'm kind of an accidental leader, maybe, but I do think where my leadership skills maybe developed early on was being a objective listener to issues, and I think I like to try to understand views from different sides. I'm a collaborative leader. I like to try to figure out where can we meet in the middle for the greater good, and so because of those just sort of natural skills that I can continue to refine, I've found myself in positions of leadership more officially. But I do try to, lead from within or lead from behind. Sometimes you have to lead out front, but really with trying to incorporate all voices. That's what I find to be most effective for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Turn
Um,
it over to you.
yeah, Joseph, again, so glad to have you on the show with us today as we kind of continue our conversation around conflict. When conflict breaks out in your organization, whether it's within the organization or maybe it's with community constituents, what's your honest first instinct? I mean, and how have you had to discipline that instinct over the years? As I'm sure you've dealt with conflicts in terms of myriad of sizes and shapes and forms. What comes to mind when you think about that particular question?
I think at different times, maybe different things, but maybe I think Dr. Loretta just mentioned it's like sort of a wondering what's the root, what I think approaching with curiosity is key. And it's not always my first instinct to be curious. There's sometimes where it's frustration or annoyance, but but I do think being curious of, wow, I'm wondering why that's coming up or where this is generating from. It doesn't make sense for me right now. So staying curious, not jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
I feel like those are really important things to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah. I like the curious part, right? Keeping an open mind. Joseph, do you think it's okay for leaders to show their annoyance though sometimes when conflict happens? I mean, after a while, you get tired of this. I've been bringing this up over the past shows that there's so much for you as an executive on the plate to deal with. And sometimes the conflict seems so minuscule and small and insignificant. Is it okay to show I'm tired of this. I'm annoyed at this. Stop it. I mean, do you think there's ever a time where you need to show it as a leader?
Yeah, I really do. And
Yeah.
I think I'm drawing upon years of direct service work with young people who have lots of different behavior challenges. And if you're always responding with, hey, that's enough, or out of a place of maybe frustration, it's not always effective. But if it's one of the tools in your tool belt where sometimes you're approaching with curiosity, sometimes you're approaching with complete compassion, other times you're just redirecting and saying it's nonsense. You have to have all of those tools and apply them at the right time, I think, to be truly effective.
Yeah.
If you're constantly trying to avoid and just bring people together merrily, it's not going to be all that useful in certain situations.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. There's a phrase we want to explore today. It's conflict is rarely about what it appears to be. So, Joseph, do you believe that? And if so, what is it usually really all about?
Well, that phrase, I think I do believe it in many circumstances. I think that miscommunication is huge, at least in probably most positions of leadership and organizations. There's a lot of things that need to take place in order for the instrument to be finely tuned. And you miss a piece of communication and there can be conflict. And it might manifest itself in who knows what kind of way. So a lot of times you have to kind of figure out what was the root? Where did this begin? Sometimes it might seem like there's an interpersonal issue between two people, and it's actually because someone else who managed the schedule that week messed up, and it created a tension between. So you figure out where is the stem from, and then dig into it. But usually it's about miscommunication or lack of information or fear. Fear is the other one, and fear can be driven by who knows how many different things. But I find when there's fear, a lot of times there's conflict as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I like the fear, the power of fear. So just as we talk a little bit about organizational makeup and dynamics, part of it is, of course, conflict cultures. I don't know. I think every organization develops a conflict culture, often slowly. But what comes to mind when you think about conflict culture? And let's dig a little deep. I mean, Cocoon House. I mean, what's the conflict culture there at Cocoon House as you reflect on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to think our culture is not conflict oriented or not heavily conflict, but it shows up in different ways. One thing that I think we're really empathetic in our work, and we allow people to bring their own unique strengths. And when you're working with people, you don't have necessarily one way to do the work, and so everyone brings their own interpersonal skills, their own beliefs and values to the mission. But sometimes if you don't organize that effectively, you kind of get people going off track. And then sometimes coming back on track, there's conflict because people feel like that they're justified in the work that they're doing. And so, it's again trying to partner up with our staff, trying to manage little things before they become bigger things is really, really key. And one of the things we've learned as an organization over the years is lean into those conversations. I mean, being courageous in discussing what's going on. I think we've come a long way. We still have challenges and things we deal with, but being able to create the space to have that discussion has been pretty effective for us. But it's ongoing management too. You never solve it. You just have to have it constantly at play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah. So, and staying within that conflict culture, there are some organizations, Joseph, who they just want to avoid conflict entirely, as if that's actually possible. But they call it keeping the peace. And others seem to be on tilt or lit, as young people say, all the time with some kind of conflict. So, what are the leadership patterns that create each of those environments, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think you have to you have to lean into letting folks play out, right? Um, I'm trying to think. I want to read the question as you asked it because I lost it on my track here. But can you repeat it one more time, Dr.
Yeah,
Loretta?
yeah. Some more organizations try to avoid conflict
Yeah,
altogether, and then they call it keeping the peace. But
yeah,
then there are others who they're running hot all the
yeah.
time, constantly. So, what are some of the leadership patterns that help create those environments, in your opinion?
Well, to me, knowing your blind spots, like for me personally, I tend to lean a little bit towards keep the peace. That's more my preferred method of leadership. For me, it's important that I surround myself with people who are more willing to have that conflict a little bit more quickly and have that healthy balance, right? So I think, to me, you want to be able to solve conflict for all different types of communication styles. You want to be able to move past it quick as possible, but you need to create the space to have the discussions as well. And so for balancing those two dynamics is the sweet spot, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. All right,
And
Dr.
Dr. Loretta, I know we're going to be going to a break in a couple minutes, but
Yeah.
I've been jumping all around because I'm so excited to
Yes, you
have
have.
Joseph on the show as part of the process. And so, one of the pieces that we talk about these hidden drivers of conflict as well. Joseph, quickly before we go to break, talk to us about unmet expectations as a conflict driver. I mean, how often do leaders create conflict without ever knowing they set the conditions for it? I mean, any thoughts around that? These hidden drivers of conflict?
I mean, I think as leaders of organizations, you've typically been there. There's information you have, historical knowledge that you assume other folks are operating with, and so you have expectations that are not actually communicated to the folks that need to know what they are, and then you're let down or disappointed when the performance isn't what you think it should be, at no fault of the person performing the work.
Right.
And so it's important to, as leaders, to step back, look at what's missing here. How do I add value to this person's perspective to help them be effective in the work?
Absolutely. Great.
That kind of goes back to what you were saying too, Joseph, about the communication, people just not communicating well. And that does happen from leadership down to frontline. Sometimes the communication, there's a gap in there.
Yeah.
So, okay, we are
But Dr.
about,
Loretta, I know we're going to break, but Dr. Loretta,
okay, here we go.
communication is always an issue. I mean, we keep thinking that the leaders within our organizations are effective communicators, and we're lousy at it. So, I'm thinking to myself, we'll always have conflict. It will always exist. So that's just my 2.5 cents. I'll just pop in there too as well. So
Thank you. Joseph, he always has that
I'm
other
sorry.
opinion. He
Yeah,
does it every show. We're
I'm
used
sorry.
to it. You know him, so you know how he is. He's gonna make
Yeah.
you think. But we're gonna bring that back
Okay.
because yeah, I do have an opinion
I'm
about
sure you do.
we will come back. So, right now we're going to take a short break. And when we return with Mr. Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House, he's going to help to answer that question that our antagonist, Dr. Dre, brought
Mm.
up
Right.
a little
Right.
earlier. So please stay tuned and we'll be right back with more Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors, informing leaders and inspiring solutions. Thank you for joining us and returning to Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Dr. Loretta Howard, your lead co-host for today. And with me, of course, is Dr. Undraye Howard, and Dr. Sheryl White is out today. But we have a very special guest, Mr. Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House, who is joining us today on our anatomy of conflict. Right before we left for break, Dr. Dre mentioned something about leaders being lousy communicators, basically saying an absolute, which I totally disagree with.
Mhm.
All leaders are not ineffective communicators. Some of them get it right.
Yep.
They do make sure that every level understands what needs to be done. Really, I think to the best of their ability, but I don't think it's always intentional,
Mhm.
Dr. Dre, as you make it sound. Yes, conflict will always be with us, but it's you have to address things and it's how you address them and getting to the core, as we've said. What do you think, Joseph?
I agree. I mean, I think there are leaders that have amazing communications. It can be their strength. And I think for those that don't, it behooves them to understand where their communication shortcomings are, and then again, surrounding yourself with folks that can help organize messaging and help you on the communication front. You don't have to, as a leader, you don't have to do all things super well, as long as you can make sure within your leadership there's someone that can hold that line for you.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'll just say, I mean,
Absolutely, I agree with that.
and I didn't want to make it sound like it was absolute that all leaders, but we've got a good majority, I think, of leaders who need to continuously practice good communication skill, right? I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. And so, but we've got a great number of leaders who, like Joseph, who's out there who knows what it
Yes.
means to communicate and do it effectively and knows how to really engage the conflict so it's managed for best outcome. So yeah, so I clarify what I stated earlier. So
Thank you
since it
so
caused such
much.
a conflict with you, Dr. Loretta, sorry.
Not a conflict. See, we got to the core of it. We got an
There you go. There you
understanding.
go.
That's how it works.
Right.
All right. Before we go into additional questions, let's get our second audience
Yes.
question. So, gentlemen, and I'm going to start with Joseph this time, and then we'll hear from you, Dr. Dre. This question is, have you ever watched a small disagreement grow and start to affect everyone? And what did you do about it?
Yes, I think that happens commonly, and usually what you do about it is probably not enough soon enough because it becomes a bigger issue. But I think you have to get folks to the table to reconcile what it is that's again causing this disagreement. Sometimes ego gets in the way and people just dig in their heels and someone's got to be right, and it really is not even about the actual topic of conflict anymore. It's just about being I need to be right. And so sometimes you got to get in there and shake it up and set some clear expectations of, depending on what the conflict is about, of this is how we're going to handle this moving forward. Some mediation, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's a pretty common thing that I think does happen.
Mhm.
It does. Dr. Dre?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Joseph. I think, absolutely. I've seen and watched small disagreement grow, especially when it's ignored. And, I think earlier on in my own leadership journey, I told myself, oh, it'll work itself out, and I don't have to bother myself with that. And like the turtle, putting the head back in the shell, avoiding it. That was my first mistake, right? Because it didn't get addressed and it just blew up. So from there, I've kind of learned that, I stopped waiting for it to resolve itself. I try to do individual conversations, try to be as inclusive as possible, try to be careful in terms of how I communicate, showing respect and showing up for folks, I think was important for me. And then, thinking about, is it okay to bring folks together so we can sit and we can have a conversation, set the ground rules up front as part of that process. And sometimes I would even have to address the team because depending on how far you let the conflict goes, it starts to seed into team dynamics and can certainly poison the rest of the team. And so, always asking myself that, get and deal with conflict head on. Don't let it kind of burrow itself and grow. That there are times you need to step in front of that quickly as possible and manage that as a process. Always remembering conflict sometimes is a signal, not just a problem. It's telling you something about perhaps the health of your team, something that's not quite clicking right or connecting the right way. And so it's important for us as leaders to kind of examine that too as well.
Great. Thank you both. I agree with what both of you said. And whenever possible, definitely, if you know about it, try to address those things early on because they just fester. And sometimes I think it's based on the businesses that we have and have worked in. Sometimes it's a personality conflicts. And it's not anything other than they don't like the way somebody looked at them or some things. And you'll look at it and think, you gotta be kidding me. This is what you're causing all this chaos. There's a lack of productivity. People are taking sides and it's about just a personality conflict. So, but you do need to address those early and have some type of guidelines. Hey, one thing I used to try to stop was gossiping in organizations. Can't do it. They're gonna
Yeah.
gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I threatened, though, like somebody's gonna be let go if all this gossiping continues. Still didn't stop the gossiping. So it's like a policy for gossiping. How do you, you know,
Right.
just
Well, Dr. Loretta, you probably became part of that gossip train too, as well. When you said that, they probably talked about you really bad
they
behind your
did.
back. So, okay, all right. So,
And I was fine with it. I didn't care. I just wanted them to do their job.
right,
Just do your job,
right. Got
please.
it.
So,
You know,
but though there are some things, like you said, there's always going to be conflict. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna piggyback on what you said about people doing their jobs and assuming that gossip is outside of the job. But I've been trying to communicate, well, part of your job is coming in and being a team player for the mission of the organization. So you're not immune to hard conversations with your supervisor or the leadership. Even if your numbers on paper and the work you're doing on paper looks really great, if you can't work within a team and you're doing these things that are poisoning the well, we're going to have that conversation.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but
I'm glad
I
you
think
said that.
people think it's not necessarily part of the work, but that actually is part of the work.
Absolutely.
It
Excellent.
absolutely is. I'm really glad you said that because, like you said, yeah, they can be great getting numbers or certain things, but you can't get along with the people you need to work with and communicate with, or you want to hold back information because you think they're trying to, oh, they're going to get my job or my. Trust me, they want to do their own. They don't want yours too. So those kind of things, and yeah, conflict will always be there. But I agree with both of you. You have to kind of nip that in the bud early on. When we left, we were talking about hidden drivers of conflict. So I'll go into one of those questions. Joseph, what role do unspoken values play, especially in organizations where everyone says the right things but behaves in contradictory ways?
They're huge. If your values on the wall, and we talk about them, as if they're true, but then the culture of the agency is something different. The culture speaks louder. The culture will always speak louder than whatever's written in your manual, your welcome manual. And we see this, and we see this a little bit in some of the equity work that we've done as an organization. And Dr. Dre, we've done a lot of work together there. But it's nonstop. But we talk a lot about our organizational values, and there's been staff that have come into the organization and say, "Hey, I hear all this. I feel something different."
Right.
And I'm glad we at least have the ability to have that discussion when someone says, "Hey, I'm challenging our values. I'm challenging that we're not doing as well as we want to believe we are." But that is so much more powerful to the impact of an employee, what they feel and what they experience in the day to day, than what we say we're about. It's just lip service.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
pure lip service. Absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
And Joseph, to go along with that, we hear a lot about ego in leadership, right? Leaders with egos, I mean, another hidden driver of conflict is this ego. But how does ego show up, do you think, as a hidden driver of conflict? And how do leaders recognize it in themselves before it does damage? Because it can do damage.
I'd see this a lot. I think I want to believe I don't have a big ego. I'm sure there's people that would say different, but I do see it within different management groups that I'm part of. And for me, a lot of times it completely shuts down discussion. It shuts down collaboration. I'm really not a big fan of like people that kind of act or operate as if they know all the answers. They know it all. It creates conflict. It creates mistrust. It creates lack of motivation. If someone, they're bringing an idea to the table and it gets quickly sort of shot down and someone, kind of, mine's better, I have more authority. It shuts down the productivity of the entire group. And so you have to manage that. And those are tough because those people are hard to go against, and it takes a lot of energy.
Absolutely. Especially when it's the leader who has an ego, right? It's hard for
Yeah.
someone who's reporting into that leader who, controls their future to some degree
Right.
to push against that. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Those are cultures
Things
that are
like
hard.
that
Right.
with what
Right.
you're saying make me think of how sometimes when a person does come with an idea, and it can be a good idea, and it gets shut down, after a while they really don't want to communicate. And I think in their mind, they're like, maybe this isn't the place for me. Let me start looking for somewhere else because my opinion is not valued. And those are things that leaders have to be aware of too with individuals in their organizations. If you're shutting somebody down all the time, well, why are you? It's a self-reflection. Why are you? Is there something going on within yourself as a leader? So just to at least listen to them, hear a person out. So just a thought. But okay, where am I? Joseph mentioned this earlier. It was about fear. So fear is one of the most powerful but least acknowledged drivers of conflict. In your opinion, what are some specific fears that leaders carry that you think fuel conflict, sometimes without even knowing it?
Well, I think I kind of use the term insecurity synonymously with fear in leadership. I see leaders get insecure that they don't know what they're doing and actually start to operate even more kind of directive or more conflict oriented, conflict style. That's one example. Like I feel like moments of insecurity where I see that conflict coming out the most. Um, and then it's so a lot of times that conflict might be lack of tolerance for other departments, other employees within their own department or their whole organization. But I also see fear around folks like in our type of work that maybe your position is a government funded grant and that grant is up for renewal. We don't know if it's going to get refunded or not, and your livelihood's on the line. We see tension in teams, and so I do think you need to really look at the environment for where people are showing up from. Give them some grace too. Like there's addressing the conflict, but also there's grace that can be afforded if we know what those drivers of fear are.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
It makes me think about leaders living with the fear of conflict. I mean, can those two coexist? I think that's the thought I'm trying to put together here is that should leaders live with the fears that conflict could bring? I mean, should that always be a present piece of a leadership journey or goal? I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking to myself that I don't know. Should we always, in the back of our mind, think about conflict, and then if we don't have control of it, that we should fear it, that it can become a monster and take over? I'm just wondering if the two can coexist. Great leadership and then the fear of conflict playing in the back of the mind. That's just a thought I had too as well. So
Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
yeah,
I think you have to have acknowledgement of that fear, but you have to have a willingness to face it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, leaders leading with the fear of conflict always is not a good thing, right? I mean, it just doesn't produce anything positive. So
Yeah.
yeah, great.
A leader who's always leading with that kind of fear, that's someone I wouldn't want at the leadership helm, to be honest. I really would not. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, if you're
Right.
that fearful all the time, because things are going to happen out of your control. When Joseph talked about that funding,
Mm,
external forces, there are things that are external to your
yes.
organization you have
Absolutely.
absolutely no control over. And if you're living fearful all the time, maybe this is not a role for you anymore. Maybe it's time to seek a gardening job. And with that, I know we have a break
All right.
coming up. So that's all I could think of,
Nothing, but
gardening. I
nothing
don't
against
know.
gardeners. You're not criticizing gardeners, are you?
No, no,
No,
Oh,
it's
I'm not. I'm
peaceful.
just
okay.
saying, you know. Okay, no, gardeners, don't take offense because I guess they have real conflict with the soil and animals. I don't know. Okay, it was just the first thing that came to mind.
Okay. All right.
We definitely need a break.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to take this break, and when we return with our guest today, Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back with more Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors, informing leaders and inspiring solutions. And we are back with more Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors. For those of you joining us again, I am Dr. Loretta Howard, your lead co-host. With me is our Dr. Dre, and then our guest today is Mr. Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House. So with that, I'm turning it over to you, Dr. Dre.
Yeah, this has been a powerful discussion. And again, Joseph, thank you for joining us and getting into some of the intricacies of the anatomy of a conflict. Let's talk a little bit about leading below the surface. And one of the things that comes to mind is the emotional intelligence portion of this. What does emotionally intelligent leadership look like when you're trying to get beneath the surface of a conflict? Not just manage the systems, but really digging deep below that. What comes to mind when you think about that?
It's a great question, and I think emotional intelligence is hard to teach, right? It's sort of it's
Yeah,
maybe refined with practice, and but I sometimes I'm surprised at where that's lacking in conflict resolution.
right,
But
right,
for me, I think it's knowing where to dig deeper, asking questions, being able to try to understand what's the motivator, what are people motivated by in this conflict, and sort of keeping biases and your own sort of opinions at the door, and just try to really be objective and understanding. To me, that's how it starts. But then and then coming up with solutions that it doesn't have to be punitive, right? We can also guide people. And I think if we're managing conflict, we can give them what our commitment to them is. It's not assuming you're now in trouble. It's, hey, this has been a struggle for you. Here's what I'm going to do to support you in this meeting, and then thereafter. It's partnering with people. It's hard, but conflict doesn't have to be, good guy, bad guy. It's something that comes up, and you work with the team to get through it.
I love that. Yeah, really looking in ways in terms of supporting the team. I love that approach. So yeah, that's really good emotional intelligence in action. So thank you.
Okay. So Joseph, what tools or frameworks have you found most useful for diagnosing conflict before you try to intervene in it?
I don't know if I have any scientific tools necessarily, but I do think it's paying attention. It's reading the room, reading between the lines on stuff. Management by walking around. That's something that people have talked about before.
Right.
You hear a lot, you learn a lot by having eyes and ears on just, the climate of the organization. A lot of times you can resolve a growing sort of concern someone might have very simply just by giving them a nugget of information that they didn't have. But I think listening is so key. We as leaders a lot of times like to talk. I think spending more time listening and allowing people to contribute their own thoughts. People a lot of times have their own solutions to the conflict too. If you let them speak it, implement it, maybe you can refine it a little bit, but they want to solve their conflict too, most of the time. I believe that anyway. It's not always the case, but I do believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. And walking around by intimidation is the other, leaders who try to intimidate, right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
That naturally causes conflict as part of that process. Yeah.
It's got to be the opposite. You got to go into a space and be curious. And if I ever, and I don't do this as much as I used to or that I would like to, but I worked with a leader one time who he showed up at every team meeting, and he was the CEO, but he was the least knowledgeable and the most curious and the most celebratory person in the room for the hard work of the team.
Right.
And that was always something that stood out to me.
Yeah.
Is no one expected him to come in and lead the meeting. He was there to be a support to the work that was getting done.
Yep, absolutely.
And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but there are some that say, and this is a question, Dr. Loretta, Dr. I'll pose to both of you, that you're a soft leader if you don't lead by intimidation, right? That you don't come in strong. That people want to see that force. They want to feel it. They want to hear. They want to see the frowns on your face. They want to feel the anger that you may have, the tension that you may have. And so, some would just call you a soft leader. How would you push back on someone who says leaders don't show up that way in supporting a team? We're not here to support teams or guide teams. That you got to be strong and forceful and opinionated. Dr. Loretta, I'm really pushing on you with this one, Dr. Loretta.
Okay, because my face is just going
I
like,
see that. Wow, look at you.
What? I don't believe that intimidation is a good characteristic for any leader or for anyone in that case. Why are you intimidating people? You're already the leader. You don't have to walk in. I'm in charge.
Mm,
I'm the one who you need to respect. Leaders have to earn respect as well
mm,
as anyone else. Just because you have a title doesn't really mean you're a good leader. Leaders get to know their people. When Joseph was talking about the leader who came into that team meeting, didn't have to run it, but was just there to be supportive, letting people know that you really care about what they're doing, asking sometimes just the simple, so how's your day going? Anything, that you need help with, or if you can't do it, can you get the resource for them?
mm.
People know I don't know everything and the organ about the different programs where I volunteer at. But as a leader, I go, I talk to them. It's like, okay, what resources here? I find out where resources are or other people who can actually help to provide that. I don't have to know everything. And I don't have to walk in like, oh, she large and in charge. No, I'm really just there to be supportive, make sure things run well.
Mm.
But, that's part of that ego that people need to get out the door. That intimidation that went away in the 60s and 50s, I think.
Okay.
Or it should have.
Right. Right. Right.
My response to that is, yeah, I've never really spent much time in an organization with leadership like that because it's just so opposite of my personal values. I think having relationships, and you said, Dr. Loretta, earning respect, and that comes from giving respect.
Mm,
Yes.
And I find where I feel most effective as a leader, where I've had my most strongest moments, I think, as in leadership roles, is when there's actually a crisis happening,
mm.
and I can look around at faces that look very nervous,
Yeah.
and I can be cool, calm, and collected, and I can let them know it's going to be okay, and I can lead that way around the room. I can feel the impact of that responsibility, playing that role, versus when you walk around huffing and puffing and you're in a, you're a mess at that point. Like, and I don't think people respond well to it. People don't have the loyalty maybe that they did in the 50s and 60s of staying in it. That if they're treated that way, they're gonna move. They're
Right.
gonna move.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like what you said because the president of the organization where I volunteer at, he's like that. He's very calm, even where there could be crisis and chaos going all around us, and we'll have our meetings. He is very calm, and he's been doing this for 30 years. So he's seen so many different things happen with the nonprofit Word of Hope Ministries. He's seen so many things happen but he's very calm. And it sets such a wonderful tone because then we have conversations, we work things out, and you can think clear if you're just not all hyped up. So that
And it's
calm in the leader is what you look for.
Yeah, and it's different than being dismissive or passive or not facing
Right,
it. It's just,
right.
hey, I understand. We're gonna
Yes,
handle it. We got this. And
yes.
and then you can go in the your private office or whatever and cry. But in the group, you let them know you're okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
We
That's
will
great.
survive.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely. The other thing too, Joseph, as we talk about, putting all conflict in the same box, is there a difference between a conflict that reveals a systems or structural problem versus one that reveals perhaps a relational or interpersonal problem? And how do leaders tell the difference between the two? Does it make a difference if it is an interpersonal versus a systems or structural problem from your perspective?
I think it does. Because if it's a systems problem, it's probably something that comes up repeatedly,
Mm,
right? So if it is something that's a conflict in systems, we name it, we talk about it, maybe we even train on it before there's actually an issue, and when people come on board. There's things, for our work, lots of times where a system is in place, say it's a child welfare system, is supposed to handle certain things with our youth, and it doesn't work that way in real life, and it's frustrating, and it creates conflict amongst our teams, potentially even with our partners within child welfare. But if we can norm that system's broken, this is what we do is the best we can, train folks on, patchwork, then it kind of it reduces the conflict. Versus interpersonal, that can be so many different things.
yeah.
And there might be themes you can address, but I think you really have to be tuned into who your people are, what they're bringing to the workplace. Do they need support, on their own outside? Those seem a little bit more individual.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Great. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we'll be going to a break shortly, but one more question around this leading below the surface. What is the greatest mistake leaders make when they try to address the root of a conflict versus just the surface?
Hmm.
maybe moving too quickly to resolution. I've seen that take place in my organization where we think we got to the root. We got to work on a timeline to get this resolved, and there's just pieces missing. Even though the intent was good, the process was okay, but just not thorough enough because we didn't take the time to do the full vetting of the situation. I feel like that's a common thing I've seen in the recent last few years. So it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah, thank you,
Definitely.
thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, well, we are going to take a short break again, and then we will return shortly, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back with Mr. Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House on Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors, informing leaders and inspiring solutions. And we are back on Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors. We have today Mr. Joseph Alonzo from Cocoon House, and we are so excited to have him as our
Yes,
guest
yes.
today.
Wonderful.
Our Dr. Sheryl White is not in today. However, Dr. Undraye and I are still leading the call with Leadership Matters today. So I'm going to turn it over to you for our
Yeah.
last segment.
And I think, again, it's just so wonderful to have Joseph on. And again, known him for a number of years and just really a great leader, a great example of what leadership is. But I also want to take a minute to just do a shameless plug. Dr. Loretta and I kind of put together this quick short read. It's got some short lessons in there for every leader to kind of think about on some various topics, just random topics around leadership, and really asking the question, is this the way it's supposed to be when it comes to leadership? And so we just kind of put some very general thoughts, some things that we've been wrestling with over the years and thought we'd share with the public And certainly you can get your copy through Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Check it out. There's worksheets in there as well for you to kind of go through and really do some exercises and really think about, answering this, I think, existential question, I call it, in terms of, is this the way leadership is supposed to be? So hopefully you take advantage of it, have some fun with it, and certainly can grab your own copy at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. So just putting that shameless plug in there, I think, Loretta, we're excited about it. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, we're very excited and we want to know what people think for
Right.
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you think it's great, send me a note, shoot me an email. If you think it's lousy, Dr. Loretta's able to take those responses as well. So not causing any conflict, of course. So
We will address all responses.
oh, okay. Great.
I can't wait to check it out.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. We like to have this, what we call rapid fire round. So just want you to answer it quick, honest, first instincts, no right or wrong answer, just what's real for you. So you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Let's
Uh-oh.
go. Conflict avoided or conflict addressed, which is more dangerous in an organization?
Probably avoided.
Okay.
Conflict
A
avoided.
lead, yeah, agreed. A leader who never gets in conflict, visionary or out of touch.
Out of touch.
The emotion most leaders least acknowledge in conflict. Name it in one word.
Fear.
Okay. Ego or fear, which drives more conflict in leadership?
Ego.
Best 3 words to say when you realize you have been reacting to the wrong thing.
I was wrong.
A leader who can diagnose conflict, born with it, or developed.
Maybe both. Yeah, you have to have a little bit of intuition, but it can be developed as well.
One book every leader needs to read on the psychology of conflict.
The book that comes to mind is Crucial Conversations.
I love that book. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. And you have 30 seconds to help a leader see beneath the surface of a conflict. What do you say?
Boy, I would say examine, be curious, approach it with curiosity, check your biases, check your, favoritism, whatever it might be to the conflict you're managing. Be objective in your approach, be thorough, document, and then follow up. It's oftentimes needs follow up.
Yes.
I'm so glad you said that. Follow-up is so important, and some people don't remember that they need to do that. You don't just address it and move on. You have to follow up to see what the results are. So, yes, agreed.
Have to
I
give us
always
some
say,
closure.
if we don't give people the time needed, they'll require it from you later. So
Absolutely.
you better
Yes.
do it. You better do it now.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Definitely. Great. Well, I think Joseph passed the rapid fire test. Don't you think so?
I think he did very
Yeah,
well,
great
very
job.
well.
Did a
And
great
he
job.
named one of my favorite books, Crucial
Yeah,
Conversations. So
absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
he passed.
Great read. Great read. Excellent.
Yeah.
Joseph, as we kind of wrap up here, the next few questions, I think we want to start maybe more on a personal reflection and self-disclose as much as you want to or not. But tell us about a time you misread a conflict. I mean, you responded to the surface and what you had to go back and undo once you understood what was really happening as part of that process.
Well, I think I can think of one where I upset a whole team, and it was I was the conflict, and there was an issue where there was a team that was unhappy about something. I forget what it was. It's hard work, and there was something that boiled up to me through multiple levels of the agency, and I heard, kind of in the paraphrase version of what was wrong, and I came up with a solution like this.
Mhm.
And I went to that team meeting and I met with them and I told them what we were doing, and it made it worse because the solution that I implemented wasn't actually solving their problem at all. And it was sort of like their problem was dismissed.
Mm.
And so what ended up happening is one of the staff had the courage to come set up a meeting with me and sort of like leaned into me and say, hey, this is what you didn't catch. This is what's going on. This is what I think would be the solution.
Right.
And I was able to work with that staff person, implement kind of a task force to address this real conflict. But for me, it was assuming that, oh, I got it. I've been around. I know how to handle this.
Right.
Um, so that was, yeah,
Yeah.
it was something that was boiling, and I only added, heat to it. So
Absolutely. Right. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. On that same note, what has been one of the most surprising or humbling things that you've learned about your own
Mhm.
role in conflict over the course of your leadership journey?
Yeah.
um, maybe just, I guess, humbling is no matter what the conflict is, if you approach people with dignity, you approach people with respect, it can get resolved, and I think so many times people get flustered or dismissive of conflict and they don't want to deal with it as leaders. But if you can really spend the energy and do it right the first time, the results are pretty positive. And I think that's something that I see. It takes time. You have to move slow. A lot of leaders don't like to move slow. I don't mind.
Right.
But I think that for me, taking the time to do it right once, you don't have to keep going back and cleaning up, is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Joseph,
Andre?
yep, changing direction because I know we're coming to our time for the end of the show, but we're asking all of our guests to share their response to this question. If you could give your younger self one piece of leadership advice, what would that advice be? I mean, I know
Well,
you. I know you're only 25 years old, Joe. So
no, no, because
okay,
I was given this advice and I use it all the time.
okay,
But I can't give it to myself because somebody else gave it to me. But
okay.
it is the stronger that you feel about a topic or a situation or a position, examine it just as hard from the other side, like a debate. Debate yourself, debate your situation from the other perspective. And I cannot tell you how many times that's helped me
Yeah,
in my career by if I feel really strong and passionate about it, well, why would someone else feel just as passionate the other way? And if you can open up to what those answers might be, then you can go into that conflict resolution much more educated about what's the need of the discussion.
yeah, absolutely. That takes some time to get to that point, though, Joseph. I mean, that's some real maturity that takes place to get to that process. Like, but that's a
Yeah,
powerful way to think about it. So, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, great.
I absolutely love that, and I
Yes.
agree with it. That's from my when I was a professor, I taught oral interpersonal where students had to give presentations, and one of them was to a persuasive presentation. So they'd have their topic all ready to go, and then it's like, okay, you're going to argue the other point. So I
Mhm.
love that you said that
yes,
because it
yeah,
really made them research and dig deeper because you need to take that other person's perspective.
Right.
So, and some of them changed their mind. So I'm so glad you said that. I'm a firm believer in knowing you have to know both sides of that. So, Joseph, what final thoughts or tips do you have to share with our listening audience? And how can our listeners, if they wanted to contact you, how can they reach you?
yeah. My only advice is leadership's hard. It's not easy, and it's okay to build the plane and fly it at the same time on certain situations, but having courage is what it takes. And I think that we're a little bit in a leadership void I see leadership lacking and folks are maybe a little bit timid to step up and lead. And I just want to encourage folks that if you have the vision, if you have the commitment to that mission of the organization you're serving, then step into those roles because we need leaders. And I can be reached through the Cocoon House website. I can also, my email is joseph.alonzo@cocoonhouse.org. If I can be a resource to anybody, I love sharing. My knowledge might be junk, it might be helpful. You decide. But I love to help people grow. I'm passionate about leadership. It was my specialty with my grad school program. So I love these topics and these discussions, and just want to thank you, Dr. Loretta and Dr. Trey, for having me today.
Thank you. And your stuff
Thank
is not
you.
junk. Your stuff is the real deal. Trust me. Trust me, it is.
Yes,
So, absolutely.
yes, yes, yes. And you would be an amazing resource for anyone who would reach out to you. So, with that, we want to thank our listening audience once again. And we thank you, Mr. Joseph Alonzo, for being with us today. And thank you for all of your insights and what you share. We really do appreciate that. So we invite our listening audience to please continue sending those questions and topics that you're interested in, and send it to Leadership Matters Questions, all is one word, at innovisions.org. Leadership Matters Questions at innovisions.org. So please join us every Wednesday live on YouTube at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Central Time, or download our podcast at your convenience on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify. So until the next time on Leadership Matters with the People's Doctors, where we are informing leaders, inspiring solutions. Remember, leadership isn't a title, it's an action. Stay curious, stay inspired, and lead boldly. Until next week.